anyone who imports 2 foreign wives has to be a free trader. She seems like a very nice lady. She just doesn't understand. Well, let me just say that when the young men in the class see the curve like that, they never forget it.
Hello and welcome to Reality Check. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by probably the world's most famous economist, Arthur Laffer. He's here in the UK to launch his new book, Prosperity Through Growth. Arthur, thanks very much for joining Reality Check. It's an absolute honour to have you on. Now, the vast majority of our viewers and listeners will be well aware of who you are and what the Laffer Curve is. But I wonder if you could, for those who don't, explain it and how it came about.
Yeah, well, I'll just make it. The Laffer Curve is the relationship between tax rates and total tax revenues. That's what it is. There's a lot of stuff going on in the middle, but very simply, if you think of it in terms of incentives, you know, if you have zero tax, you're not going to collect any tax revenues. No matter how good income is, you're not going to collect any revenues. And if at 100% tax rate, so if every time you go to the office, instead of getting a check, you got a bill, you'd quit working pretty soon. And again, at that rate, you'd get zero tax revenue. So then when you start lowering the rate from 100% to 99 to 98, sooner or later, someone's going to go to work and they're going to start paying taxes. Likewise, at the bottom, they're at zero tax rates. If you raise the tax rate to 1%, 2%, you're going to see an increase in revenues. And it's sort of a curve, hyperbole, if you will, that relates tax rates and tax revenues. The important point here is that there are 2 tax rates for every tax revenue. One in the normal range, which I say is normal, but it's not, is where if you raise tax rates, you will collect more revenues. The other one is the prohibitive range, which if you raise tax rates, you'll get less revenues, not more revenues, because you'll discourage work so much. And, you know, what you know is that there are always 2 effects on a tax rate when you put it on. Number one, if you raise a tax rate, you do collect more revenue per dollar of tax base. That's true. But the second effect is the economic effect, which is if you raise tax rates, you reduce the attractiveness of that activity and you'll shrink the tax base. These 2 effects always work in the opposite direction. So when you look at these taxes, and unfortunately budget offices and governments never do in the correct way here, is if you raise tax rates by 10%, you're not going to increase revenues by 10%. You may increase it by 9% or 8%. You may even lose money. And that's the Laffer curve, and you need to look at these feedback effects. And it's been around in economics for 1,000 years. I mean, it's in the Muqaddimah by Ibn Khaldun. John Maynard Keynes has the most beautiful description of the Laffer curve ever imaginable. I didn't invent it. It's been here forever. And just for the record, Michael, I didn't name it either. That was a journalist from the Wall Street Journal who named it Taxes, Revenues, and the Laffer Curve. What I did do was I brought it into the forefront of macroeconomics. Every microeconomist in the world understands that you can price a product too high and lose money. You can price a product too low and lose money. There's a sweet spot in there. All that is just the same thing in macroeconomics. You can have tax rates that are in there, they're sweet spot, or you can have them too high. And Britain, if I might just add, it's way too high. I mean, if you look at Gordon Brown's tax increase from 40p to 50p, it's the whole exchequer had a Laffer section there showing how revenues actually went down. It caused people to leave the country, to tax shelters, all that other sorts of stuff. And it worked in the opposite direction. So it's, I think, a very relevant one for discussions, especially in Britain today, in the U.S. I mean, we've gotten rates down pretty nicely, but we still have ways to go.
Well, let's jump into Britain in a minute, but just sticking on the history of the curve. It gained your name when you were working for Reagan, and the tale goes that you drew it on a napkin, a little like this one. What was the story of that?
The story is really that it gained fame under Jerry Ford. I was sitting there with Don Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney. Don Rumsfeld was the Secretary of Defense. But at that time, he was Chief of Staff for the new president, Jerry Ford. And Dick Cheney was my classmate at Yale, one of my dearest friends. He was Deputy Chief of Staff. And they had this thing called whip inflation now, WIN. Which is a 5% tax surcharge. And I just explained to it just the way I did with you that, you know, you may collect more revenue, but you aren't going to collect 5% more. And you're deluding yourself if you think you are. And I did the curve on a napkin. And, oh, my God, Eureka, lights flashed. Not true.
And why did you draw it? This is just a personal nerdy question of mine. Why did you draw it sort of this on this axis rather than the...
Have you ever taught a class?
I have not.
Well, let me just say that when the young men in the class see the curve like that, they never forget it.
Yeah.
I joke about that, and that is true. But what I've always tried to do, I'm a mathematician, and I do all of it in math. But what I do is use these pedagogic devices, these examples, these parables, all these things to get their attention. And the curve is really very much their attention, and they focus, and then they have a lot. And just like you.
It's so
striking. It's like
striking.
everyone, they love the curve. And that's all I tried to do, was make it up as appealing as I possibly could to get good economics back into public policy. And we're starting to make some headway.
Yeah. The US, I guess, might be making some headway, but it's harder to make that case in Britain. Our overall tax burden is heading for a post-war high, even if individual taxes on sort of middle earners are actually relatively low to where they've been in the past. You said we're on the wrong side of that.
Yeah.
Two questions. What would be the optimal tax rate on the Laffer curve for Britain? And given that we're about to have this budget that's going to massively raise taxes again, how far wrong are we?
Let me just say the optimal is so far away from anything we are talking about right now. It's just, what you do know is the higher tax rates are, the more likely an increase will lead to less revenues. The lower rates are, the more likely an increase will lead to more revenues. You also know the larger the tax base, the more likely an increase will lead to more revenues. The smaller the tax base, the less likely it'll lead to more. So there are lots of things in here, and there are lots of taxes out there. There are literally thousands of taxes in Britain, and so you can't say what is the optimal rate. But what you want to look at here is, when you look at the burden of taxation, you don't want to look at taxes over GDP, let's say.
Yeah.
Because the taxes have reduced the GDP. The burden is really much, much worse than that. You've destroyed the prosperity. If you look at Britain's GDP as a share of the world, 50 years ago it was high. It's gone way, way down. You are disappearing. This is the land of the Industrial Revolution. This is the land of Adam Smith and David Ricardo. This is the land of entrepreneurs. Capitalism, if you're up in Scotland, it's all the Presbyterians were with, here we are, we're capitalists, we're a religion. This is the country that discovered the modern world of good faith. It's lost it.
You think Britain's really lost its way?
Well, of course it has lost its way. It's really terrible. I watch what's going on. And, after the Gordon Brown 40 to 50p, what does Cameron do? He lowers it to 45p. What? He should lower it to 35p. What you need to do is cut a big shakeup, break some of the furniture, break some of the china, and really get a new start on the whole tax structure. And you need to get control of the government by a good political focus on economics.
But is that possible now? In the last few years, we saw Liz Truss, our shortest serving ever prime minister, attempt to do just that. She slashed tax rates, and it ended at the markets wouldn't accept it. The gilt yields soared, and we had to have an emergency budget to undo it all. So if we do need this big shake-up to the tax system, hasn't Liz Truss proved that it's pretty difficult?
Well, I don't remember her getting any of her policies into effect. And it's amazing how tax cuts don't work until they take effect. So she didn't. She had the words that she wanted to do, which scared the Bank of England, which is independent, which it shouldn't be, and pushed on this thing and caused the financial markets to do. Kwasi had a very serious, good plan. Kwasi Kwarteng, who was the Chancellor of the Exchequer, he did a great job, but it never was tried under Liz Truss. It was put forth as something and then smacked down before it even began. So I don't think that's the correct example to use as a failure. I would look at Lady Thatcher. When she came into office, the highest marginal income tax rate in the UK was 98%. People were borrowing suits from Savile Row, not buying them because they can deduct the. It's just crazy stuff that was going on. She got it down to 40p, and the country really prospered. There is an actual, real representation of what can happen. We had it with John F. Kennedy in the U.S. We had it with Ronald Reagan. We've had it with Donald Trump. We had it with Bill Clinton. We've had some really good, absolutely cutting tax rates and how well they performed in the U.S. And, it shouldn't surprise anyone if you tax people who work and you pay people who don't work. Do I need to say the next sentence to you?
Yeah.
Don't be surprised if you find a lot of people not working. You know, Thatcher's ad, if you remember the Saatchi and Saatchi ad for their labor is not working. Labor is not working. The hall.
I've got it on a fridge magnet.
It's just what a wonderful thing there. And it's just common sense. What you want to do in this world is you want to reward things that are good and penalize things that are bad. If you want more unemployment, pay for people to be unemployed. If you don't, it's just plain incentives based. And that's all I can say. I mean, you tax rich people and try to give it to the poor people. And if you do that, you're going to get very few rich people and lots of poor people. I mean, incentives really matter. And if you don't run it by incentives, you're going to lose everything.
But is there an issue with how we fund these tax cuts? Because people who are critical of Liz Truss's attempt, and I take your point that none of them were actually implemented, but I think the reason markets had an issue with it is because she wanted to fund it by borrowing. Would you be in favour of that and just letting it see if the results, or do you think, no, we have to control spending? Because that's Britain's problem, right? Is our spending is totally out of control.
Well, no, you've got both problems. You've got too much spending, that's very true, but you've also got too high tax rates. Now, the question is, if you cut tax rates, let's take them from 50p to 40p and undo Gordon Brown. What do you think would happen? If revenues went down when he raised the tax rates, what do you think when he lowers them? You don't have to fund that. It's going to fund itself. Now, that's not true of all taxes by any means, but you can pick and choose. You've gotten to a situation here in the UK that there's so much low-hanging fruit that you can just pick it and not have to worry about the budget consequences. These people who are budget hawks and all that are mistaking the problem. The problem is tax rates are way too high, not taxes. Tax rates are way too high. And the best way to raise tax revenues is by cutting the highest tax rates. You've got a spending problem too, but your spending problem also can be alleviated dramatically by economic growth, by getting people off the dole and back to work. You know, John F. Kennedy put it so beautifully in my country. He said, the best form of welfare is still a good, high-paying job. And when you get a country that's focused on jobs, low tax rates, you know, and rewards the producers, you're going to have a miraculous recovery here in Britain. I can't imagine how high you can fly, but you will be able to fly to the moon and the stars. You are the country that started the Industrial Revolution. You are the country that started prosperity in this world. You've got to reclaim your title to it. It's just shocking how you've lost that title, and I'm here to try to do as much as I can to get you to reclaim it.
Well, you've put a smile on my face, which is unusual for all our economic broadcasts, because we're always talking about bad news. But I wonder if we move on to your book, Prosperity Through Growth. And this is your plan for how Britain can get out of this mess. What's your key messages beyond the issue of
there are
taxes?
five major areas to look at, maybe six. All right, number one, taxes. Low rate, broad-based flat tax. Get the lowest possible rate to provide people with the least incentives to evade, avoid, or otherwise not report taxable income. And you want it the broadest base with the least number of exemptions, exclusions, write-offs, credits, all that garbage, so they have the least place to put their money to hide it from the taxman. Low rate, broad-based flat tax, spending restraint. What you want to make sure is the last dollar of money spent, the benefits from that are greater than the last dollar of taxes collected, the damage. And that's where you stop already. You need limited government. There shouldn't be stimulus spending or any of that. There are lots of very, very correct functions of government there. Military, judiciary, schools, all this stuff. That's true, but beyond that, nothing. Stop. Sound money. You need sound money. You can't have an unhinged paper currency as you've got right now. You need sound money, stable prices, low interest rates. Minimal regulations. You're overrun with regulations in this country. You want to make sure that for every regulation, you don't have all of this collateral damage that does unintended consequences to the economy. Yes, you need to require people to drive on the left-hand side of the road. They shouldn't drive on the right. Okay, I agree. But make sure you use a light touch, not a heavy touch. And lastly, free trade. Free trade. Just get rid of just free trade. And low rate, broad-based flat tax, spending restraints, sound money, minimal regulations, free trade, and then peace through strength. The reason you want a good, strong military is so that you don't have to use it. The best form of defense spending is always wasted Whenever you find yourself in a situation where you're required to use your military hardware and prowess, that is a clear sign you didn't spend enough. And then take all of your enemies and say, if you're going to be nice guys, we'll open up our markets to you and let's get rich together. If you're going to be a bad guy, we've got a strong military to stomp on you. All that's just incentive-based. And you can create John F. Kennedy. You can create Ronald Reagan. You can create Lady Thatcher. You can create all the prosperity you want. And I'm just praying you do it before I hit that long one. I'm 85 years old. You get to work on it. I need you to do it fast.
Well, hopefully we will. I'd like to get on to free trade in a bit, but just to pick up on 2 points. Going back to tax, I think we have to accept the world we live in. The current Chancellor of Britain is not about to slash any of the major taxes. But we've got this spending problem, which is partly because so much of our debt is linked to inflation, which is my next question about how we've lost control of inflation. And her solution to this is she's going to raise taxes, but she's committed to not raise our big free taxes. So she's not going to touch income tax, she's not going to touch VAT, and she's not going to touch employee national insurance. But we've seen before from her first budget that when you go for nicher areas of the economy, when you go for wealthy people, or you go for farmers, or you go for the gambling industry, then it just gums everything up. Now, obviously, you're never going to be in favour of a tax rise, but if you were in her position, would you say it should be better to do the big free rather than those sort of side
Of course
taxes?
You would. The broader the base of that. But let me, if I can, go on the rich. I need to address this because you hear this, and we all would love to see the poor be better off. I can't think of anyone who doesn't want the poor to be better off. I mean, we all do. And we all understand very much that high tax rates do lead to inequality. We all know that. But when you look at it, and this is my book, Taxes Have Consequences, not this one, the one before this, 3 years ago. I looked at the whole U.S. income tax from 1913 to the present. We have every single tax return. We have the facts. I am sick and tired of people's opinions. I mean, you should not care about my opinion, and I don't care about anyone else's opinion either. This is about facts, not how you feel. And every single time we've raised the highest tax rate on the rich in the U.S., every single time, the economy has underperformed, tax revenues from the rich have gone down, and the poor have been hammered. Every single time. Now, no exceptions. Every single time we've lowered tax rates on the rich, three things have occurred. The economy has outperformed, tax revenues from the rich have gone up, and the poor have done well. Duh. Why would you want to raise taxes on the rich? You hate the rich so much that you want to kill all the poor people?
It just plays so well politically.
Well, it may play well politically, but I do not want to be Morocco. To be honest with you, I don't want to be the poorest country in the world, which is what Britain is heading for. Now, if you want to sit there and do posturing all the time, but posturing is not good economics.
Yeah,
it's not good policy, and it's just the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, and I'm just going to ask you on your first point on that answer again, because this, I think it will cause a bit of a stir here. You are definitely saying that in Rachel Reeves' budget, if she is going to raise taxes, she should raise income tax.
Well, that's only if. That's only if you want to raise taxes. You want to have the broadest base, taxes bear the most load. That's the only reason. She should not raise taxes at all. She should cut them, and she should especially cut them on the rich. She should cut them on the rich way down to create jobs, output, employment, so that these poor people can find good jobs. And, with good jobs, they can afford to do and take care of themselves. You get rid of all the welfare pay, all that. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows that you don't raise taxes on a desperately poor country like Britain. You just don't do that. You don't raise taxes in a recession. And have you ever heard of an economy being taxed into prosperity? It's about the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Have you ever heard of a poor person spending himself into wealth? It's stupid. I mean, don't do those things. Everyone knows that those don't work. If you want your kids to get good grades, don't tax them when they do. Give them a reward for what they do. If you find people who are employing other people, don't raise taxes on those people. Let me give you an example this way. Why do we tax speeders on the freeway? Stop them from speeding.
Stop them from speeding, sure.
Why do we tax smokers?
Stop them from smoking.
Yeah, why do we tax people who earn income?
Stop them earning income.
No, we don't. Why do we tax people who employ other people? To get them to stop them? No, we don't. Why do we tax businesses that make wonderful products at low cost and make lots of profits? Why do we do that? We don't tax them to make crappy products at high cost and use all the lobbyists and game players and all that sort of stuff. No, we do it to raise the revenues, to run the government. But don't you think for a second that those taxes still don't have the same consequence. If you raise taxes on workers and producers, you're going to get less workers and producers. You're going to get less income. You're going to get less employment, and you're going to get less good products. And you can see those things today, every day in Britain. You're going to get all this underground economy. You're going to get all these tax sheets, et cetera. High tax rates are the perfect reason for people to cheat on their taxes, for people to move out of country, for people to shift the composition of their income, to change the volume of their income. All of that's what they do. And these people who are rich, they can afford lawyers. They can afford accountants. They can afford deferred income specialists. They can afford lobbyists with government and all these other political constructs. They can do this, and they will do it, and they will get around your taxes. Believe me. A low-rate, broad-based flat tax, people will pay the income they know they deserve. If you make 10 times as much as I do, you should pay 10 times as much as I do in taxes, but not 100 times as much.
Sure.
It's not fair. So the rich people are going to – this world that we're in should not be rich against poor. It should not be black against white. It should not be old against young. It should not be male against female. We are all in this tub together. And we all need to agree on what a good tax system is. Low rate, broad-based, flat tax, the right one. No Brit is ever made better off by pulling a fellow Britisher down.
Yep.
You're all made better off if any one of you is made better off. Kennedy put it this way in the U.S., a rising tide, it raises all boats. You need to focus on Britain, not on rich people, poor people, tall people, short people, young people. Stop that stuff. Just get a low-rate, broad-based flat tax and bring prosperity, and you'll all do well. If you do it the other way, you're going to be fighting with yourselves forever, and you'll hate each other. If that's what you want, go for it. But that's not what I want.
Now, you're still a young man, but it's fair to say you've been making these arguments for a number of decades. Does it dishearten you at all that certainly in countries like Britain now, we seem to be further away from it than ever? I mean, the line from the government and the sort of popular view of the public is that, no, we can tax our way out of these problems. We can take more from the rich. People don't realize that the top 1% pay something like a third of our tax already.
Ours are placed like 60%, 50%. Let me just tell you, but I'm not disheartened. In 1944, the highest marginal income tax rate in America was 94%. Today it's 37%. All right. In 1976, every state but one had a death state. Now 38 have gotten rid of their death. All the states have gotten rid of their inventory taxes. We've got cleaner waters, we've got cleaner air. We're making huge progress. It used to be we've decontrolled oil, we've decontrolled railroads, we've decontrolled airlines. We've got huge improvements we've decontrolled the sky. We are making enormous progress on both social and on economic grounds. We're kicking the living bejabers out of the left-wingers. And we've taken the corporate rate from 52%, which is what it was when Kennedy took office. It's down to 21% now, and it's going lower. So, I'm not only not disheartened, I'm ecstatic about it. And all I want to do is bring a little optimism to Britain. You guys deserve the very best this world is. You led us all into free market, democratic, pro-growth capitalism. You did. Thank you. And it's my coming to you today. If there's anything I can give you from my experiences, I've been going into the Oval Office now for 55 years. I was in the White House in 1970, George Shultz's right-hand person. I've been going in there for 55. What can I do for Britain to allow you to get the prosperity you deserve? And your kids deserve it, and your grandkids deserve it, and all of you do. And that's why I worked so much on this book, Prosperity Through Growth, is to hopefully give you – I'm not British, and I am an American, but I really want you to share in the prosperity that this world has. And I think I have some ideas that'll work because I've been working in all these countries. I've worked in Chile. I've worked with Lady Thatcher, as you know, all the way through that. I've worked in all these other countries as well as in the U.S. And, it as Larry Gatlin says, now he's a country and Western singer, as you may, art, it ain't rocket surgery. It's just plain common sense. Have you ever known someone who's been hired by a poor man? No, you need rich people to create
Sure.
it. And don't worry, sooner or later, you'll make enough money and you'll invest correctly and you'll become rich too. Who would not want to win the lottery? I think do you have lotteries here?
Yes, we do. We're big on the lottery.
And
here.
do rich people the only people that buy the lottery tickets?
Oh no, everyone buys lottery
Why
tickets.
do they buy the lottery ticket? Because they want to be rich too.
Sure.
They want to be rich. What's wrong with being rich? There's nothing wrong with being rich. There's something very wrong with being poor. There's something. The dream in Britain should be to make the poor richer, not to make the rich poorer. The dream is to help those who need the help by creating opportunities for them to prosper, not to destroy the opportunities of other people to make them poor. Or get you rich so-and-so. No. There's nothing wrong with everyone wants to win the lottery. Let's allow them to have the chance by not taxing the living hell out of them. And that's what you're doing. You've made it so that these people can't get out of their poverty trap. And it's so debilitating. Then they go to drinking too much. They go to drugs. All these social problems arise because of their despair, their lack of pride, their lack of initiative. Imagine some guy goes home and he and his wife have 4 kids, and he goes home and, no, I couldn't find a job. I've been looking all over. Yeah, hand me the bottle of scotch. No, that's not a good society. Let the guy have a chance to fly with his own wings. That's it. You are depriving the poor of Britain from having a chance of becoming rich because you're so anti-rich. And that's just wrong. Wrong. The rich, everyone wants to be rich. And if you use that incentive structure, you can create the most prosperous, wonderful country everywhere.
But do you really think Brits are actually as ambitious as Americans?
Of course.
In that sense?
You're no different than we are. In fact, you and we probably come from the exact same gene pool everywhere, all the way through across the board. I mean, it's all there. I mean, yes, of course you can. It's genetics.
Yeah.
And everyone knows it. If you feed a dog, you know where the dog will be at feeding time. If you beat a dog, you know where the dog won't be. It won't be where you gave it the beating, but you have no idea where it won't be, where it will be. It's going to just take off. Taxes are like beating. It tells you what not to do.
Yeah.
Do not report taxable income. It doesn't tell you how not to report taxable income. You can use evasion, avoidance, underground economy, move to a different jurisdiction, change the composition of your income, use tax shelters, bribe politicians, whatever the way. But don't report taxable income, which is the wrong message to send to your people. And when I look at the Chancellor of the Exchequer today, she seems like a very nice lady. And very wholeheartedly wants to help Britain. Nothing. She just doesn't understand that raising tax rates on the rich will hurt the British Isles, will hurt the poor people. It will lower revenues. It will cause British economy to stagnate, and it will kill the poor, the minorities, the disenfranchised. That's not a winning model. Please, please, please love your country. Don't hate your country. Please don't. I'm here to tell you that love will solve the problems with low taxes, sound money, free trades, reduced spending, and minimal regulations. And then you're off to the races.
Yeah.
Woo! Energy. Look what you could do in the North Sea.
Yeah.
And you're not doing it.
Well, energy is our biggest problem, right? I mean, we're spending more on industrial and household energy than anywhere else in the world.
When I look at Britain, to size any one thing up as your biggest problem is a toughie to do because there's so many big problems. But energy is one of them. Why aren't you decontrolling energy right now? Bang! You could be a high-energy producer. You could be a data center country. You could be all that stuff, but you're not. And do you know how much it costs to heat a home in here? What's wrong with it? And you've got all that energy resources sitting up there. Just do it. Don't talk about it. Don't sit there and say, I don't like those people. They're liberals. They're conservative. No, you're all in this tub together. Rachel Reeves and what's his name? Mel
Stride.
They're all Britishers.
Yeah.
You're all in the same tub. We all know how to run a country. Don't tax people who work and pay people who don't work. We all know that that's a losing argument, even if it may be a winning argument in Parliament one day while I'm lecturing you too much.
No, you're not. You're not.
All right. This is the lesson of history.
Yeah.
If you want to look at rich, prosperous countries, you do not see high tax countries.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a lecture we need to hear. But one of the other issues you mentioned there, and also in the book, is the idea of sound money. And when I look at Britain's spending problem, part of the reason we've got here is, like a lot of the rest of the world, after 2008, we for some reason decided that money was now, if not free, it was very, very cheap. Inflation was gone. Interest rates were were going to stay down. And we saw that from the Bank of England's forecasts, where the inflation was only going to be something like 5%. It ended up going over 11%. And as a result now, the interest we pay on debt is soaring. The amount we're having to pay on inflation-linked welfare benefits is shooting up. How much do you blame the Bank of England for sort of losing control of inflation?
There shouldn't be a Bank of England, to be honest. And this is me. It surely should not be independent. The people who bear the consequences of the actions of the entity should be the ones who have control over it. That's aligning incentives with authority with responsibility and consequences. But when you look at it, Britain today, and I'm not going to take you through Britain, but we had our Fed took over the U.S. dollar in 1913. Since 1913, we've continually monopolized. The government now controls money 100% in the U.S. From 1913 to the present, the price level has gone up 34-fold.
Yep.
Interest rates are all over. From 1776, no, I won't tell you what happened on that day, but from that day till 1930, our revolution.
Yeah.
From that day to we had no inflation for 130 years, 140 years when it was private. The reason you have cryptocurrencies coming in, you have the stable coins, you have Bitcoin, you have all these other things coming, is because of the lousy money system. And the private sector is trying to recreate a monetary system around it. If you don't straighten up the British pound, and if we don't straighten up the U.S. dollar, the private sector will create a new money that will take over all of that. And so they should.
Yeah.
If the government can't run it, if you want to see...
So you think we will just move to a cryptocurrency that's got no central
exactly
bank
what's happening.
involvement?
Look what's happened to Bitcoin. Look what's happened to the price of gold. These are all the ways that circumvent the monetary system. They are direct consequences of bad monetary policy. And, it's like the old rule. If you want to get rid of crime in the streets, put the government in control of the crime.
So you're not saying...
And they'll stop it immediately.
You're not saying put the control of interest rates back into the Treasury. You're just saying it should not be government controlled at all.
Well, you should have a stable coin where you know that the value of a coin or of a pound is going to be the same 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now. So you have long rates are very low and stable and very good. And it's very easy to do. In fact, our long-term interest rates from 1776 to 1913, I mean, they never went above 6%, never went below 4%. They drifted down during that whole period. But there was never wild gyrations in these markets. No, it worked beautifully. Long-term capital markets worked beautifully. And you and Holland were the biggest investors in the U.S. We ran trade deficits. We built our country in trade deficits because of Britain and because of that. Thank you, thank you, thank you for funding our economic growth. And, my chance right today is to pay you back and give you the reasons how you can create it. You need a stable pound. And that means if it's crypto, do it through crypto.
Yeah.
But there is no way these people on your Bank of England know what they're doing on banking. You do not have the capacity to control interest rates, and you sure don't want those inflation rates coming in there. You're too small a country, to be able to handle high inflation. It's just killer.
Yep.
Use crypto. Use all the things, but stop inflation now.
Yeah. Well, it's the worst tax of all.
Well, it may not be the worst, but it's a bad one.
Yeah.
It's a bad one.
Mm-hmm. You've talked a bit about Rachel Reeves. If Reality Check viewers are big fans of the bookies odds and the polls, and they would suggest that our next government is going to be reform led by Nigel Farage. I wonder what you make of them, because some on the right of economics criticise them and say that they're billed as a party of the right, but their economic policy, at least what they've announced so far, restoring certain benefits, nationalising certain industry, are quite left-wing.
Yeah, I know Nigel Farage fairly well. I'm a big fan. I think he's going after the right issues there. What he's doing, he's breaking the China, he's breaking the furniture to rebuild a prosperous country here. Now, what I would beg you not to do is to take the nascent seeds of sprouting of the Reform Party and assume that that's what it's going to be 20 years from now. I would guess that the Reform Party will become much more conservative and pro-growth, democratic, economic, free market, capitalist policies along the lines I have put in that prosperity through growth. I think that's the way they're going to go. I don't know that for a fact. That's the future. I'm much better at forecasting the past than I am the future. I really am. But I think you've got to get the party to be powerful then to do it. But there is so much good policies, low-hanging fruit there, that I think something like the Reform Party is going to try to really engorge itself on good economics and really take over the political system. And if the Labor Party, if the Liberal Party, and if the Conservative Party don't respond quickly in kind, they're going to be lunch meat for the reform. Yeah. And I think people deserve the governments they get. And anyone who votes for these people who do these things deserves to be a loser. And they are a loser. You can't feel sorry for someone who does it to himself or herself. You just can't. And Britain has been doing it to themselves for way too long. Stand up on your hind legs and do the right thing and bring Britain back. We need a prosperous Britain. I mean, we in the U.S. do. We need you're our best partner ever. Be strong with us.
And what happens if we don't fix things, if we don't follow the advice of your book? Some suggest that we're heading towards a 1970s style bailout, where we had a bailout situation where we had to get money from the IMF. Do you think that's where Britain's
that
going?
Won't do it. That'll last you 2 weeks. If you do, you'll become Ethiopia on weekends in a week. I mean, there is not a country that has taxed itself into prosperity. I'm sorry to say. If there were, you'd be really a prosperous country. And spending itself, and poor people don't spend themselves into wealth, or you'd be a really prosperous country. You'd be wealthy as all get out. I mean, just look at what's happening and learn from those mistakes. If you do something and results come in counter to what you thought, undo it and bring it down. Don't just do be bold, be strong, and just bang.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to do. And I'm here to help you as best I can. I've got tons of examples in the book there. By the way, my co-authors, you should know my co-author, Lord Michael Simmons, one of the coolest guys you've ever met, really understandable, one of the best financiers, hedge fund guys ever in the world. Matthew Elliott, Lord of Micklefeld. I don't know how they get these names. I love it, the titles. But he is a wonderful. He's got the Jobs Foundation. He's incredibly bright, great economist, works in government, knows what he's doing. I mean, so blessed to have him. And Douglas McWilliams has been around the barn lots of times. What a great, great guy. They are my 3 co-authors. In fact, really, they should be the 3 authors, and I should be the little substitute author.
Well, you're the celebrity.
Well, I did the first draft here, but boy, then they took it and really made it great.
And if we can, we've talked so much about Britain. If we can talk about America, you've spoke loads about the importance of liberal free trade. You're very supportive. In fact, you advised Donald Trump during his first presidency.
And second.
What do you make of what's going on in the second presidency? Tariffs are surely the largest tax rises that America has seen for nearly a century.
Can I talk to you seriously?
Of course.
When you look at Donald Trump, he's a different style. Now, he's a style from a group of people that I'm very familiar with because my background is very similar to Donald Trump's: prep schools, Yale, Ivy, all that, for generations of successful. And, when you look at him, take Donald Trump very seriously, but don't take him literally. He has a style of things. Now, he called me, this was during the first term, and he said, Arthur, I'm a free trader. And I did. I knew he was a free trader.
You still think he's a free trader?
Oh, of course I do. And he ran an international company, Trump International. Every CEO of an international company is a free trader. They all are. And I also then probably made the mistake I shouldn't have said, but I said, sir, anyone who imports 2 foreign wives has to be a free trader. He didn't laugh.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But here's what he said. He said the U.S. is the freest trade big country in the world. We gave all these preferences to all these combatants at the end of World War II. We did it there and allowed them to use protection to build themselves up, and we never required them to remove it. We are of the large countries, we're the biggest free trader of all, that's the truth. Today, you can use flexibility much more than you ever could before. You don't need tenures. He can use executive orders. And lastly, the U.S. has leverage. He said this to me. He said, these other countries have all this protectionist legislation against the other countries, U.S., and all these things. They have not only tariffs, quotas, non-tariff barriers, all this stuff. All of them do. And how do I get them to see the light and come to the negotiation table and lower tariffs? How do I do that? The only thing they care about is access to the U.S. market. So I'm going to scare the bejabbers out of them with 50% tariffs, 100% tariffs, 200% tariffs, and then bring them to the table.
So he's doing this for the free market.
Well, let's take a look at his first term. He did 5 deals in his first term. The USMCA, lowered tariffs, lowered tariff barriers, lowered quotas, was freer trade. Japan deal was lowering tariffs, lowering restrictions as well, lowering non-tariff barriers. South Korea, again, reducing trade barriers, not increasing them. Brazil and Colombia, all 5 of those deals were free trade or more free trade deals. He had this one at the G7, which was up in Ottawa with Baby Trudeau. You remember Baby Trudeau? I knew his father, God. But they were up there. He had to go to Singapore to meet with Kim Jong-un because of the nuclear thing there. And
Sure.
When Kim Jong-un, remember, said, I've got a button, and Trump said, I got a bigger button. That's Trump all the way. And love him for what he said, I have to leave early, but and I'm very sorry I do, but I've got a deal for you before I leave. The U.S. is prepared right now to get rid of all tariffs, all non-tariff barriers, and all quotas, if you will, to the other 6 members. They sort of looked up, put down their shoes. See you, Donald. Bye. He is, I believe, this is me, negotiating to get a free trade world, to get the most prosperous world, and he knows how to negotiate. He knows how to do deals. He really does it. And this is not just words. This guy is an amazing person. I've known Donald Trump for a long time. I think he's the single best president the U.S. has ever had. That's me. And I love Reagan. He knows how to do all the stuff and get it done. We have this stuff going on in the U.S., No King's Day. I don't know if you heard about that. Yeah, we need a CEO. We don't need a national pollster as president. No, we don't. We need someone who knows to get the things done and put the policies in that will give us prosperity.
So is the end of his presidency going to see job done, those tariffs coming back down, a victory for free market capitalism?
I think he's the best thing for capitalism, pro-growth, democratic economic capitalism ever, and free trade. That's me. You ask him, he's not shy on saying what his views are, but that's my view of him, not his. And I think that makes him the best president. I keep teasing him a little bit. Ronald Reagan got the highest tax rate down to 28%, sir. You're still at 37. How can you be, just prodding him, trying to get him to move a little bit? Yeah, I think that's true. And I think he uses negotiation. Look at what he did to Gaza. Look what he's doing in Iraq. During his first term, there were no wars. Biden started how many? Weak people start wars. And the 6th kingdom of supply-side economics is peace through strength. Biden was war through weakness. Just silly stuff. And, look, can you imagine what the world would look like if Kamala Harris were president of the United States? Ouch.
Yeah,
it's terrifying, isn't it?
Place.
Do you think she stands up to Xi and Putin? Do you think she understands how to do Tomahawk missiles and to sit there? No. Trump knows how to do it. Trump is a great, great president.
But will he stay committed to kind of this strategy, even if it does start to harm the American economy? If we see job losses, if we see inflation?
I think he is terribly sensitive to the consequences. I know very well he understands what happens in trade wars, like the Smoot-Hawley tariff. He knows that very well. He's not stupid, and he studied it, and he knows it. He also knows what happened during the Nixon Camp David when we put a 10% import surcharge on. I was in the White House then, George Shultz's right-hand person. He knows what it was. We had the job development credit that excluded foreign-made capital, all of this protection. He knows that the Great Depression the Smoot-Hawley tariffs led to the Great Depression, led to World War II. It doesn't get any worse than that. We saw what Nixon did and the horrible economy. We also see the other side of it. The Kennedy round tariff negotiation, where we reduced tariffs dramatically, was the go-go 60s. We saw it with Reagan when he had the NAFTA, and we did that. We saw the huge prosperity under Reagan. So we've seen both sides. Trump is perfectly alert to all these, but he also understands the negotiation ability he has to use tariffs to get issues, and he is in that stage. Now, do you think you're going to find out what tariffs are going to be for the long term in 3 weeks? No. Don't ever think that Trump is going to change the style of shaking the tub and changing the things and getting better and better and better and better results. That's what all good capitalists do. You seek out a new trying to find a new invention that reduces costs. Donald Trump is really innovative and creative in creating the prosperity that we also desperately want. And he's done a great job. Look at median wages going up in the U.S. Look at all this. Look at inflation stayed down. We closed the border, yet still GDP is growing like mad. Come on. What do you want? I want a CEO of my country who's elected, and that's Donald Trump. I don't want a king, but I want someone who's elected, who behaves like a CEO and runs the country correctly. I don't want him to sit there and say, well, I've got a poll result that says this is wrong, dude, and I'll yell at you. I'll go out and picket there. You got all the weirdos and freakos and do-nothings and doodads all out there. No, this is a time to run it like a grown-up, and he's doing exactly that. Lady Thatcher did that too, by the way. She was very firm, very clear. And, it's not that they won't make mistakes. They will. But they also will recognize the mistake and change. Donald Trump has no vested interest in a policy. He has a vested interest in U.S. prosperity. And if he tries something and it doesn't work, believe me, he's going to untry it real quickly. He's not going to get hung up and let the U.S. fall because of his obstinance. He's not that way inclined. He's a businessman.
Arthur Laffer, thank you very much for joining Reality Check.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Really.